Welcome to the end of the season recap for the Miami Dolphins, the 8-9 Miami Dolphins. We disappointed you yet again, Miami Dolphins. The 25 years of no playoff victories, Miami Dolphins. Joining me is Isaiah Smalls, who just wraps up his first season of covering these wonderful South Florida NFL franchise. Congratulations. Don't take a victory lap yet. Your season hasn't even begun. Your season hasn't even begun, sir. When you cover the Dolphins, you have to go through the era of dysfunction. And we are now sitting in it, just submerged in the land of toxicity and dysfunction. This is just part of what happens in the NFL when you do not meet your expectations. Even if the Dolphins had made the playoffs, and let's just say they got to Buffalo, and even if Tua Tagovailoa played in that game, let's just say woulda, coulda, shoulda, magically wave a wand and all these wonderful things happen, they would have still got smacked by Buffalo, and we would have been exactly right where we are. But what this situation presents, following that 32-20 loss to the Jets, following the episode of Tyreek Hill basically saying, I'm out, I want out. And then later, Steve Ross basically saying to his fan base, we're going to run it back one more time, one more again. I believe in the continuity and people playing well together. But understand that does not mean that my expectations are not greater than what we've achieved thus far. This is welcome to the Miami Dolphins. So, Isaiah, how do you wrap up all of what happened on Sunday?
I think it's just, if I could give it one word, it's just disappointing, just overall, right? Because, obviously, the playoffs hopes, they kind of died, when if you looked up at that scoreboard, you saw 24-0 Broncos at halftime, right? I think me and the homie were doing the math yesterday. I think the Chiefs only ran 35 offensive plays. So that wasn't going to happen, right? And so then you fast forward to the game, right? The game itself, right? Because, Calais said, in the post game that, by the end, you kind of realize it's 2024, right? Between the scoreboard up there, apparently there's fans in the stands yelling at the players, y'all not going to the play. So by the end of the game, when they realized, all right, it's kind of off or not, they still had pride to play for, right? And it just, the defense couldn't stop anybody, and I think that's the issue, right? Because at the beginning,
hold on, time out.
Wait, let me. And I'm talking about the second half. In the second half, they couldn't stop anybody, and it's just what McDaniel said. It was the lack of complementary football. In the first half, they played well. The defense played well, was stopping them, giving the offense all these chances. They couldn't do anything with it. In the second half, the offense starts to get going, and the defense can't really stop anybody. Aaron Rodgers looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if I was a team that felt like they were a quarterback away. I'm definitely trying to go pay that man. We'll see.
But a lot you got to go through and deal with when you get Aaron Rodgers now.
I agree with you, but the one thing that mind you, I've started the Aaron Rodgers Enigma docu-series yesterday because I was just confused, especially if this is going to be his last game. I just wanted some greater context. However, there was a bunch of teammates that spoke up for him and said that he's a great teammate, but I don't want to go there, right? Let me just wrap this up. Disappointing because, and then as if that weren't enough, right? You lose at the end of the game, go to the locker room, everyone's disappointed, everyone's sad. Your best player, arguably the best player on your franchise, on your team, says, yeah, I don't want to be here anymore. Disappointing is my one word to wrap up this season because it's just like as if it weren't enough, right? As if missing the playoffs, as if a sub 500 record weren't enough. Here comes Tyreek Hill saying, "Yeah, I'm gone. I don't want to be here no more." Essentially,
let's run that video before we get to breaking it down. This is Tyreek talking. It's a very end of a 3-minute conversation that we had with him, members of the media. Understand that the conversation was forced. Tyreek told us, I don't want to talk. Y'all don't want me to talk. And Dolphins PR basically forced him to talk as a captain, brought him back inside the locker room because he had left. And Tyreek did his best to be diplomatic and polite and say the right things. But eventually the real Tyreek crept out. And here it is.
You know, this is my first time I haven't been in the playoffs, man. So, I mean, for me, like I said, man, I just got to do what's best for me and my family, dog. If that's here, or if that's wherever the case may be, man, I'm finna open that door for myself, dog. As I'm opening the door, like I'm out, bro. You know, so it was great playing here, but you know, at the end of the day, bro, I got to do what's best for, you know, for my career and, you know, what's best. Because I'm too much of a competitor to be, you know, just out there.
Mean you thinking about leaving here?
If it is, hey, if yeah.
I'm sorry for laughing, but it's like,
You're
you
laughing
know,
at Dolphin fans' misfortune. How dare you? It's like, no, go ahead.
it was a situation where a player who had been angry and upset and frustrated all season and did his best to hide it had enough. And, you know, we've seen the situation where he blew up on the sidelines once. Tyreek lied about it and said, oh, no, I was, you know. But realistically, can you logically give me a reason why Tyreek Hill was not the most targeted player on the Miami Dolphins team?
I cannot. I mean, other than like, you know, the revolving door at quarterback that happened at the beginning of the season. No, that's the only reason.
Even when Tua came back, he wasn't the most targeted player on his team.
That's true. That's true. Obviously the too high. Actually, so then no, I can't.
Hold on. Let's talk. And I'm not defending Tyreek. Okay?
I can't
Understand. I'm not defending Tyreek.
Yeah.
Tyreek has faced too high safeties his entire career. Let's be real about that.
No, that's why I didn't even finish that thought, because I'm like, and it has been repeated ad nauseum in the media room, like ever since Tyreek Hill, you know, grew into Tyreek Hill, he's been seeing double safeties. So like I did too high safeties, excuse me. So like I just don't even, I don't know. I think that's a better question for McDaniel, right? Honestly, because I think it's interesting. Like if you look going into the year, right, with this whole he's the best player in the NFL, right, as voted on by his peers, right. You look at the players who are down further on that list, you know, the Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons, these guys that are, you know, elite talents, right, and are younger than Tyreek Hill, right? They were still able to get these star players the ball, right? And that's the part about it that's a little bit just confusing to me, to your point, right? Like Justin Jefferson practically revived Sam Darnold's career as far as I'm concerned, right? And so like if there has to be ways as an offensive mind to get your star player the ball in space, the ball just easily, just ways for him to get the ball. Don't get me wrong, Tyreek had an issue with some drops. Like, I'm not going to excuse him for that, right? He's had some terrible drops. If you go back and watch that San Francisco 49ers game, which could be their final game together as between, you know, Tua and Tyreek, it's kind of embarrassing because it's just like, yo, you dropped a lot of balls, bro. Like, I look in Pro Football Focus said it was only one. I'd have to respectfully disagree. So to answer your question, there's not really a logical answer. I guess we're gonna just talk to McDaniel about it tomorrow.
Listen, this is what happened and what Tyreek did, and I remember watching Mike McDaniel because I think Mike McDaniel was thrown off kilter with the whole Tyreek saga and situation, which, you know, I'm sure he watched the video right before he came in and addressed us because he's got to be able to address something that just had happened. And the one thing that he said, which I really take, he was trying to be very polite and diplomatic about it, but he was basically like, I don't want to give you the answers for what went wrong this season or what the fixes are, because I don't want to have to come back to you and ask for a do-over. Like, and I think we're in that situation now with Tyreek, especially where you're look at his Twitter page, and it's the GIF. Obviously, Tyreek is an infamous troll, but the GIF is a picture of Antonio Brown, but the head has been removed, and it's Tyreek Hill's head. Antonio Brown running off the field with his shirt off after he quits on his team. But the picture is Tyreek Hill's picture, face on it. Mm-hmm. The one thing I will say in this whole situation, is we know Tyreek likes attention. He craves attention probably like no player I've ever met in my life. And attention is attention, good attention, bad attention. I don't think Tyreek could have been okay with the NFL talking about the playoffs and moving on without him, and nobody cares what Tyreek is doing, what Tyreek is feeling, what's going on with Tyreek. Like, it wouldn't have sat well with him. Now, the mature version of Tyreek was basically, I don't want to talk. The real Tyreek dropped the bombs because, listen, I'm not happy. I'm not comfortable. We don't have a winning culture. We're not a winning team. We're not headed in the right direction. And I don't think it's just Tyreek that feels that way. I think even many members of the media, you can look at this team and understand that they had a small window to win, and that window is closing. Now, it'll be interesting to see what can be done to keep that window open, but that window is closing, and that window gets a lot more shut if it does not include Tyreek Hill. Now, the question is, how does Mike McDaniel fix this situation?
I don't even know. I'm not even gonna hold you. I have no clue. I think you got to start with the conversation with your best player, and honestly, you got to take responsibility because you are an offensive mind, right? I think that's where you start. I think you got to say, hey, look, and then I think you also got to check the temperature too, because like I don't know, man. I feel like, and this is something that we were mentioning a little bit in the media room today, like. You gotta think about what just happened. Like, let's break it down. Tyreek Hill basically just said, I don't want to be here, and then left, right? That wasn't here yet, today in the locker room, right? To be able to, either walk that back or say something. So he basically left kind of his teammates a little bit out to dry, right? Because now they're answering questions about it, right? And as much as you might love Tyreek and as much as you might respect Tyreek, I'm sure you don't want to spend your last day answering questions about it, right? And so just the natural, just a little bit, just annoyance of it. Oh, you don't want that to fester as a head coach, right? So I think you gotta sit down with your team leaders. You gotta sit down with Tyreek and just see where he's at. Because granted, as McDaniel said, it could have been the heat of the moment, right? He's not happy. He's held it in all year. He's done a great job holding it in all year, lying to our face, all that fun stuff, right? Finally blew up. Boom. Finally taking his stride. Luckily, like, he doesn't have to be in front of us for like another 6+ months, right? So there's time for this relationship to be repaired, right? But I think it also starts with an apology on Tyreek's part. Like, he has to apologize to his teammates, has to apologize to his coaches. But then also, McDaniel should take some responsibility too. Because, again, you have one of the most dangerous weapons in football and you couldn't get him the ball. I get it. I totally understand, right, that he's facing too high safety, just facing blah, 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 all this stuff, right? I get it. But there has to be a way to get him the ball. And I can't wait because I'm definitely about to go there. I'm about to, in this offseason, I'm breaking down the film. Everything. I'm like going to be looking at Tyreek's routes. Because like, I still don't understand it, right? I still am just confused, man. He did not hit 1,000 yards for the first time since he played 12 games, right? In like 2019. So it's baffling to me.
Yeah, this is a receiver who's put up 1,700 yards the last 2 years in this offense. They were bad offensively this year. I mean, I don't think there's any way to really pacify it because, when you look at the team, they were number 6 in offense, Tyreek's first year in 2022. And then last year, they were number 1 offensively. And then we start regressing and we start going backwards. And, I'm looking up right now where they finished the year offensively. This Dolphins team, they finished the year, goodness gracious, they finished the year 18th offensively. And so you're a mid-tier team. You're right back to where this franchise has been during the eras of Joe Philbin and Adam Gase and Brian Flores, kind of, not really. But why? What happened? And I'm very excited and interested to hear what Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel have to say about the team tomorrow in the postmortem, where we do the autopsy on the body. And see who's laughing now about the offensive line. And the lack of attention or emphasis put on the trenches and the trench play, and just how they feel like the mistakes were made and what they learned from those mistakes. I wrote a piece in the Miami Herald that ran on Sunday, where these are the 10 things that you should learn from this season. And I learned a lot, because I was one of those people advocating for contract extensions for players. I was one of those people, who believed that, that Tyreek was ready to be a leader, and clearly I was wrong. Learned my lesson. But
wait, just real quick, whose contract extension did you advocate for?
Oh, Tyreek's. Tyreek, I was fine with Mike McDaniel. Tua's contract extension. Yeah, everybody get money. I was, let's make it rain. We clearly will have to continue the same amount of success offensively. Raheem's contract, yeah, let's make it all rain. Clearly, I was wrong. I also learned about when you invest in 30-year-olds, their bodies are going to betray you. This is why this is a young man's game. And as productive as some of these players were, there was massive decline from Tyreek Hill, from Raheem Mostert. You have to factor in age. You have to wonder if age was a factor in that. But that we can deal with in the postmortem. But let's get to Steve Ross's statement, where he basically dictated to the fan base, I know y'all want change. I know Black Monday is here, but I ain't doing nothing. I blacked it up for him.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I'm going to stay consistent and keep things status quo through the organization. I believe in continuity, and this is a culture that I want to continue to invest in.
Yes. So,
where do you sit with that as somebody who's watched this team closely for you?
Yeah, I think. First, there's like two modes of thought, right? There's one thought one school of thought that says, look, like, season fell short of the expectations. A change needs to happen. Boom, let's make it. The other school of thought, and this is kind of where I'm, leaning on, is that like good teams don't make wholesale changes, right? Like you can do little tinkers here and there. But good teams, good franchises, they don't make wholesale changes unless you really, really, really think that it's awful, right? What we saw from the Dolphins this season was very disappointing. It wasn't awful. It was awful at times. I'm thinking about Tyler Huntley's first start. That was awful. That was really bad. That was awful. But outside of
that start, that was awful. Yeah,
that was awful too. But I kind of expected that one though. I kind of expected that because going on the road.
Huntley do the offense for like 5 days. You expected him to ball out?
No. But I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was the week before, to be honest. So I think, look, the modus of thinking, right? To me is like, look, like if you don't think that it was that bad, that awful, then let's not make the wholesale changes. Now, where I fall on this, in that, on that swinging pendulum is I go back and forth, because I do think that there has to be some change at the building, the structure of the team, because I don't think, to the point you made, countless times, that this team was constructed all that well, because they relied on players that didn't have the best injury history, right? And so when those players start breaking down and, you got to play the backups, it's just, if the backups aren't ready, then it's just unfortunate, because, I'm thinking of something that Emmanuel Ogba said today, man. I asked him, like, do you really think that, like, injuries, were the downfall of this team, right? And he said, yes and no, because injuries happen in football, right? But at the same time, you have to get your backups prepared. And, in my head, I'm like, okay, what are you alluding to, right? And he wouldn't go into detail. We'll just say, like, look, you just got to get your backups prepared. Now, you can kind of extrapolate from that what you want. But, look, I wasn't surprised when when they announced
your backups have to also be good, by the way. But go ahead, continue.
That's what I'm saying. You have to. It's about the structure of the team. You have to build it properly. Now, look, you can kind of make an argument that a lot of Chris Grier signings didn't pan out, right? But the ones that did,
Yeah.
The ones that did were fired. Jonnu, well, obviously, amazing. Calais, obviously amazing, right? Even drafting Chop, like great. People were giving him a lot of crap for that early on. Now,
still can't set the edge though.
Huh?
I said still can't set the edge though.
Look, due time. He has the highest rush percentage, pass rush percentage, pass rush success percentage since like Micah Parsons, something like that. Like there is a basis for which he'll be good, right? And so yeah, I mean, look, I wasn't surprised. Do I think that this team was built correctly? Probably not. But like, good teams don't make these wholesale changes. Let's just hope. Let's just pray. This is the last thing I said before I pass it back to you. Let's just hope and pray that this Ross's announcement came with a little asterisk that we couldn't see, but Chris Grier could see. Let's just hope that it came with that little asterisk saying, look, I expect success next year. I expect this team to be up because look, this team has more free agents than players signed on contract through 2025, right? So you have it's basically a blank slate as far as I'm concerned. Now, is that a good thing? No, not at all. I personally don't think that's a good thing at all. But for all intents and purposes, you have another chance to build this team in your image in some way. And if it falls flat,
yeah,
you gotta go.
My thought process on Steve Ross's statement, and this is something that I will address later this week, is if I've been here for the entire Steve Ross tenure, and I've lived through and experienced his hirings, and his hirings have been quite painful. All of them. If you remember, Mike McDaniel wasn't his first choice. He went out there, back channels, trying to get Sean Payton, and then got the pow-pow from the NFL. And the last time he hired a general manager, who was Dennis Hickey, that was his fourth choice, the fourth person that he had offered the job to. And the other individuals turned him down, and not for other jobs, turned him down to stay where they were. So understand that some of these things are a lot harder than fans think they are in terms of, oh, I've got a GM opening here. Who wants it? Everybody wants it, right? Well, not really. And in that situation, in that instance, a lot of people turned it down because he was going to force a coach, which was Joe Philbin at the time, who everybody knew was more of a librarian than a head coach. He was going to force them to inherit him. And a lot of people were like, no, we don't want to be in that situation. We don't want to get this opportunity and inherit a head coach. We're not going to be set up for success. So they said no. Then Hickey said yes. And then then Steve Ross came to the conclusion that he wasn't qualified for the job based on where the league was going in analytics and sports science, and then hired somebody, Mike Tannenbaum, as a consultant. And then in the offseason, after realizing Mike Tannenbaum was more qualified to be the GM, put him in charge of Dennis Hickey, who later whacked Dennis Hickey. So, it's and then when he had to whack Mike Tannenbaum, he just handed the job to Chris Grier. Because, I don't want to go through a hiring process. Like, here, you do it. Then with Brian Flores, insubordination. Then we're on Mike McDaniel. People act like this whole hiring process has been a painless and seamless situation for Steve Ross. It's been very difficult, probably the most difficult aspect of his job. If it requires money, Steve Ross can do that. It requires selling people on his organization, not so easy. And I think that when you look at this job, no matter what, whoever took over the job was going to be asked, if not forced, to inherit Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa. So instead of doing that, I think Steve Ross said, you know what? Let me run it back one more year, give these guys one more opportunity to fix it. It's just money. I'm going to be handing it out anyway. I will hand it out to you. And I don't think fans give it the proper perspective, because it's not like this organization, this regime has been a total disaster. At New Year's Eve, in the year of 2023, they were heading into a game against the Baltimore Ravens, and winner was going to be the AFC's number 1 seed. Winner of that game was going to have more than likely the MVP of the NFL, whether it be Lamar Jackson or Tua Tagovailoa. Now, it just so happened the Dolphins suffered, I believe, 4 injuries, including so many of the starters on that team in that game, and got mollywopped. Now, who's to say that this organization, Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel, can't in a 1-year cycle, because it's now January 6th, can in a 1-year cycle get them back to that point where they were on New Year's Eve against the Baltimore Ravens again? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but I do know I got trust issues, but those are well documented, and the Dolphins have caused those trust issues. And when you have when you poorly build your roster, have bad success in the draft, and they have, and I don't care what anybody says, they've had some bad drafts, and then you have to patch up those holes because you had bad drafts with aged and injury-prone free agents. It just makes it an unhealthy roster. But this is where we are, and this is how we've built it for the last 2 years.
Yes. Hey, look, you're better. This is crazy. This is insane.
This is the Dolphins. This is what we do.
This is the Dolphins. Yeah, I guess so. I guess I just from where I'm from, I'm just not used to this level of
well, that's
ineptitude.
That's because you're I don't want to Ops fan. So your organization is run by probably one of the best executives in the NFL. He hits on his draft picks. He makes good evaluations. Saquon Barkley, not a lot of people thought he was worth the bag that the Eagles gave him. And the Jets have proven that they were right. They don't need a first-round pick. They go on draft Jalen Hurts in the second round and actually develop him. They move on from a head coach that, hell, he just got fired today.
Yeah.
By the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wasn't the magic maker when he won a championship with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I say this in jest because, honestly, Doug Peterson was my number 2 choice for this job when Mike McDaniel got it.
Oh, wow.
I wanted them to hire Brian Daboll, who survived with the Giants, even though there's probably no logical reason for him to survive. But they went the Steve Ross route and said, let's run it back one more time. One more game.
Didn't Daboll inherit Daniel Jones?
Yes.
Probably why. That's probably why. He's like,
yeah, but
out of here.
Yeah, I mean,
I choose this man.
Yeah, listen, it's a tough world out here in the NFL.
That's what I'm
and what you're learning is people aren't getting 3 years anymore. You might get 2, if not 1. Gerard Mayo, this is a produced business, or I will see you later.
I don't get
kind of situation. So
firing a first-year head coach.
You don't get what?
I don't get the justification for firing a first-year head coach unless you don't think that unless he's a terrible person, he lost the locker room, all that stuff.
I think you realize. I think what happened with New England is they realized that this guy was in over his head, but keep in mind that you're unfairly comparing him to Bill Belichick.
Yeah,
and maybe he was a good leader, was an alpha male. You wanted to. You made him your successor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's ready. And truthfully speaking, I think Mike Vrabel being out there had a lot to do with them making the decision when they did. The last thing you want is Mike Vrabel, who I think is going to be the number 1 candidate out there, to go end up with the New York Jets, and then the coach that you should have had be the one that you're looking up to. It's timing is everything, and
play for the Patriots too.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he played for the Patriots. Yeah, so he knows your organization. He knows your culture. Probably it'll be interesting. Elliott and Alonzo Highsmith, who we know down here from his time at University of Miami. Those are smart football people, smart football guys, and I think they probably looked at the situation and said, "Nah, this ain't gonna pan out well." from a coaching standpoint when you evaluate everything, when you look at it up close and personal. And sometimes, and that's probably part of the reason why Steve Ross probably said, I'm going to run it back one more time, is because when you make those changes, you should make sweeping changes all at one time so that there's continuity. And people like the Jets organization, I don't understand how they're hiring a head coach before they hire a GM. Like, why would you do? Yeah, why would you do that? Unless you're going to give the GM power, and I mean the head coach power, and the GM is going to work for him. So, you know, and even that, very few deserve that kind of power and ability. You know, Jim Harbaugh maybe. So Jim and John Harbaugh. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Tomorrow we've got General Manager Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel wrapping up doing their postmortems, and we will be here on Dolphins in Depth to give you the summary of what was said and how we feel about it. On that note, we'll see you tomorrow.